I bought this supercharged Mercedes C-Class for $600 with a clean title, got it running, and today we're finally going to drive it. Now before we go take this out on the drive, there's a few little things left to do. First, I want to get into that trunk because I want to make this car a car that we can use, and I got to take care of that engine oil because I don't know how old it is. I don't know if it's contaminated from the back pressure of the exhaust. And it's always good to, do an engine flush, keep it nice and clean. So, let's go do that. Now, while the trunk isn't a safety item, we do need to get it open because the third brake light is bad. Initially, we thought we'd need to drill into the trunk to release the latch, but we ended up being able to open it up without that. What happened actually was the latch here, you can kind of see, was actually stuck open. So, pushing it back down helped, and then turning the key once it was down, let it release. Now we have access to the trunk, and there's someone did fireworks, I guess. We've got a hair tie, we got a spare in there. There's a spare in there. Indeed there is. Here we can see the back of the third brake light and the latch mechanism. Normally this is covered up by a panel inside the trunk lid, but it's missing on this car, so we'll have to pick one up at a junkyard. Now the latch needs to be repaired or replaced, but as it turns out, it was also not plugged into the harness. With that done, the driver trunk button and the key both work to open it. We will get the handle fixed in the future, but we have a functional trunk again, so let's get to work on the brake light. As you can see, this brake light is in terrible condition. To remove it, we have to undo 4 T20 Torx screws, then press in on the retainer tabs. With the screws out, we'll use a trim tool to help remove the brake light. Our used brake light from the junkyard looks a lot better. It's still red. To get the clips to work properly, we need to make sure they're in the right place. The little tabs need to be tucked in by the lens. We need to be careful when slotting in the new light since they can become brittle over time. We don't want to break this one since they're about $100 new, and this was the only good brake light out of 4 cars at the junkyard. Once it's clipped in, we can put the screws back in to fully secure it. We also picked up a trunk liner at the junkyard, so we'll install that now. First, we need to tuck in the panel into the hinge trim. Then we can connect the trunk release button to the harness.
Make sure that it works.
There are 2 clips to hold the panel into the hinge trim, one on each side. We also need to reinstall the panel which acts as the trunk handle, and that snaps in by the handle part and is held in place with 2 screws. And to wrap it up, we'll install the rest of the pins that hold the panel in place. They're 2-part clips with a center pin that locks it in. Using OEM clips usually gives you the best fit. And with that, we're done in the trunk. So now that we're done with the exhaust, brakes, and tires, it's time to do an engine flush. Now, since the oil that's in here is of unknown age, potentially multiple years old, and probably lost a lot of viscosity, we're gonna start by doing a flush with some fresh, inexpensive oil. This is some 10W40 synthetic, and then once that's done, we'll put in some good 5W40 full synthetic, and it'll be good for the next year. So let's get to it. So this is the underside of the engine. This is the oil level sensor, and there's the drain plug right here. So normally you would have to remove the under tray. However, as what appears to be a trend with German cars that you buy from an auction, it is not present. So it's probably a couple bolts or something, but I don't really know where they go, so I can't help you with that, unfortunately. So on this car we have the lower O2 sensor that is attached here. I don't know if that's really where it's supposed to be attached, but that's where I put it because otherwise it was just hanging loose. But I'm gonna move it out of the way, and that way we have good access to the drain plug. I have to move myself out of the way, and this is a 13. Got a catch pan here. I just gotta get Just get under it. What, they smoke it to Alabama?
Probably.
Ah, ow, oh. Are you okay? Smashed my hand into like a bolt. Oh god, I like. Whew. Are you bleeding? No, not yet. Maybe later. Alright, moment of truth. Here it comes. Hey, I didn't spill it everywhere. Nice. Huge success. I don't know where I put it. It's dark. It's still got some viscosity. I can't tell if it's grainy or my hands were dirty. I think it's my hands were dirty. No, it's smooth. It's brown. It's dark. Not too bad. If this car had a dipstick rather than an electronic system, we probably would have been able to check the oil to decide if it was good enough to use with the flush. But considering the too small battery that was in the car, it's possible it got the cheapest oil available, so it won't hurt to put in something known to be good for the flush. It does smell a little bit of fuel, which would make sense.
Of course it's going to.
So because of the blocked up exhaust, it was getting forced into the crankcase, and you probably get fuel mixed with the oil, so it might have thinned it out a bit. One thing to note on Mercedes cars of this era, while we're down here, is that under the cross member in the front, there is actually a jack point right here. So this is actually a good way to jack the car up if you only have jack stands and a jack. Just put your jack here, lift it up, and then use the two jack points on either side to put your jack stands up, and then you've got your car up in the air and you can work under the front of the engine. In the rear, there's no jack point itself, but you can jack it up by the differential and then do the same thing. So that way you can get all four corners up in the air and work underneath the car. Just make sure you check that the car is stable before you get under it. Okay, so now that this is trained, put this back on. And we're using the plug and washer since it's only for 20 minutes. And I'm going to leave this underneath, so if something does leak for whatever reason, it's good. There we go. Nice and just snug. And then we'll get it to the proper torque. And we have the new train bolt and washer. Now we have to put in some oil and the engine flush. This engine needs 5.8 quarts of oil, and you can double check that the level is correct on the dash with the car off. Before adding in the flush, we'll start the engine to get oil where it needs to be. We're using liquid Moly engine flush, which is what we've used before on other projects. We've used cheaper engine flush before too, and they work fine, but this seems to work a little bit better, especially for an engine with unknown history. We're going to put the whole bottle in, but check the instructions to see if you need more or less, depending on your engine's oil capacity. With the flush in, we can start the engine, but do not rev or drive it. It does thin the oil out a bit, and you don't want to damage your engine. We'll also listen to the engine while it runs, and if it gets louder or clattery, we'll shut it off and put fresh oil in. Otherwise, we'll just run it for 15 minutes. Almost 15 minutes. Now we're gonna get down there and drain this oil out. So, since it's run 15 minutes, it's gonna be hot. So be careful down there, because the oil's gonna be hot, the exhaust is hot, everything's hot. So we're gonna get down there and be careful. Now we had some fresh oil going in, so this is probably gonna be dark. Getting all that stuff out of the engine. Toasty, toasty. I'm gonna get out of here. Let's let this drain out a little longer. The oil filter is actually located right back here. Now, we did run into an issue. We actually received the wrong filter, even though we ordered from a reputable site. So this is a reminder to check your parts before starting a job, because you never know. Fortunately, we were able to get the right filter locally. The size is 27, so drop that on, and then we can probably What the can see, this filter is in bad shape. It's old, it's gunked up, and it looks like it hasn't been changed in a few oil changes. Replacement filter will come with an O-ring set. This is actually 3 O-rings, one for the housing, and then 2 for the... here? Yeah. To remove the old O-rings more easily, you can use a pick. Just be careful not to stab yourself.
Ooh, these O-rings are hard. Proper maintenance is really important. Look at that, it snapped.
It's important to replace the O-rings when you replace your filter. They actually came with our filter, which is only $6.99 at the auto parts store, so you can still do it on a budget. Don't forget to use a little bit of oil to lubricate the O-rings when you put them on.
You want to make sure it seats.
We'll get the filter started with a ratchet, and then with the torque wrench we'll set it to 24 Newton meters. It's actually written on the housing, which is really convenient. It's got the new crush washer and a new bolt. So we're going to 30 Newton meters. I'm gonna pop this back on here. There we go. And now this is where you would put your under tray back on. With everything back together, it's time to put in 5.8 quarts of our good oil. We're also going to add liquid Moly anti-friction because it really helps when you start up your car after not driving it for a while. Kent Bergsma of Mercedes Source, a great reference for all things Mercedes, has seen that molybdenum additive in oil can help slow down wear in engines. It's also used in aviation to retain lubrication in case of oil loss. I put this in my cars and can definitely hear smoother starts on the valve train, even after sitting for a few weeks. Then we'll check if the oil level is good, and we can start the engine. And with that, the car's ready to get back on the road. So after everything we've done, we can finally drive it. So what do I think so far? Well, it drives really nicely. It's surprisingly comfortable for a C-Class, which was the entry-level car in Mercedes lineup back then. Admittedly, this has the Sport package, so it might actually ride a little firmer than the regular C-Class, which I'd be interested to try one that was just the regular spec, because it might even be more comfortable. It's got plenty of power, nothing crazy, but enough to have plenty of fun, especially with the manual gearbox. And yeah, it's really nice. Especially for what we paid for it. That's wild. We still have a few things to do. We got the rear sunshade that's stuck up. The wipers need to be repositioned. Needs the air intake returned back to stock to have our actual cold air intake. We're going to do the grille to go back to the stock look instead of the badly plastic dipped over the chrome. And we do need a engine cover just to get back to the stock look. Outside, still a little bit of paint we would need to do, but there's not really any rush for that. Oh, and the AC works really well. It's always a plus. So as I mentioned, there's still a few things to do on this car, and one of the big things I've done is upgrade the radio, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss that. As always, if you like watching me work on cheap European cars, be sure to leave a like, and let me know in the comments if you have any questions. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.